the emergency alarm screaming through the cockpit were the last sounds Marcus Webb heard before his cargo runner punched through Zareth 7's atmosphere at entirely the wrong angle. Metal shrieked, warning lights painted his face in shades of amber and red, and then the world became a spinning chaos of crimson sand and purple sky. When consciousness returned, it arrived with pain. Marcus groaned, tasting copper and grit, his body refusing to respond properly to his mental commands. The cockpit had become a twisted sculpture of warped metal and shattered display screens. Through the cracked viewport, he could see nothing but endless rust-colored dunes, stretching toward twin suns hanging low on the horizon. He tried to move his right leg and immediately regretted it. Something was definitely broken, possibly in multiple places. His ribs protested every breath, and warmth spreading across his side suggested bleeding. This was bad. Zareth 7 was barely colonized, just a handful of research outposts studying the planet's unusual mineral formations. His distress beacon was likely damaged, and even if it wasn't, help could be days away. The heat was already becoming oppressive. Without the ship's environmental controls, the cockpit was rapidly transforming into an oven. Marcus fumbled for the emergency kit, his vision swimming, but his fingers felt thick and clumsy. He managed to crack the seal before darkness claimed him again. He woke to coolness, which seemed impossible. The heat should have killed him by now, or the injuries, or simple dehydration. Instead, something damp and wonderfully cold pressed against his forehead. Marcus tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids felt weighted. "Rest," a voice said, melodious and strange, each word carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. "You are safe now, traveler." Safe seemed like a relative term, but Marcus didn't have the energy to argue. He drifted in and out of awareness, catching glimpses of violet skin, flowing silver-white hair, and eyes that glowed faintly amber in the dim light. Gentle hands tended his wounds with practiced efficiency, applying substances that cooled the fire in his broken body. When Marcus finally managed to keep his eyes open for more than a few seconds, he found himself in a space that seemed carved from the desert itself. Smooth sandstone walls curved overhead, adorned with intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the flickering light of bioluminescent crystals. He lay on a low platform covered in impossibly soft fabrics in shades of cream and gold. "You returned to us," the melodious voice said, and Marcus turned his head to find its source. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen. Her skin was a deep violet that seemed to shimmer subtly in the crystal light, and her hair fell in waves of silver white past her shoulders. Facial features that were familiar enough to be recognizable, but distinctly alien, marked her as humanoid, with high cheekbones, a delicate nose, and those remarkable amber eyes that studied him with obvious concern. She wore flowing robes and layers of rose and cream that seemed to float around her as she moved. "Where am I?" Marcus managed, his voice rough and cracked. "The sanctuary of whispered sands," she replied, moving closer with a grace that seemed almost liquid. "I am Desha, keeper of this place. I found you in your broken sky vessel 3 days past." 3 days. Marcus tried to process that, tried to remember his cargo run, but the details felt slippery. "I need to contact my company, let them know I'm alive. Your communication devices were damaged beyond my ability to repair," Desha said, settling onto a cushion beside his platform. "I have sent word to the nearest outpost, but it is many days' journey across the sands. Until help arrives, you are my guest." She lifted a crystalline vessel filled with pale blue liquid. "Drink. It will help your body heal." Marcus eyed the offered drink with understandable suspicion. Desha's expression softened, and something that might have been amusement danced in her amber eyes. She took a sip herself, then offered it again. "My people have tended wounded travelers for generations," she said softly. "We know well the chemistry of many species, including yours. This will not harm you. The liquid was cool and tasted faintly of mint and something floral. Almost immediately, a pleasant warmth spread through Marcus's chest, and the constant ache in his ribs dulled to a manageable throb. "What is this place?" he asked, looking around with fresh appreciation. "I thought Zareth 7 was mostly uninhabited." "Mostly," Esha agreed, returning the vessel to a nearby shelf carved into the sandstone. "My people prefer solitude. We are healers, scholars, keepers of old knowledge. The sanctuary has stood here for 1,000 of your years, hidden from those who would exploit our gifts. And you just happened to find me?" Her smile was enigmatic. "The sands speak to those who know how to listen. They told me of your fall." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "You were gravely injured. Marcus Webb. Your body was shutting down when I reached you. You know my name. Your identification was intact." She gestured to a small table where his personal effects lay neatly arranged. "I needed to know your species to properly treat you." Marcus watched as she moved to check his bandages, her touch gentle but confident. There was something mesmerizing about the way she moved, the way the crystal light played across her violet skin. When her fingers brushed his bare shoulder to examine a wound, he felt an unexpected spark of something that had nothing to do with pain. Esha paused, her amber eyes meeting his with startled awareness. For a moment, neither of them moved, the air between them suddenly charged with unspoken recognition. "Your injuries," she said finally, her voice slightly unsteady as she withdrew her hand. "They are healing remarkably well. Better than I anticipated." "You're good at what you do," Marcus offered, though he suspected that wasn't the only reason for the sudden tension. Perhaps. She stood gracefully, putting a professional distance between them. "Or perhaps there is something unique about your constitution. I have treated humans before, but never one who responded quite so intensely to the healing compounds." The way she said intensely suggested she wasn't just talking about medical reactions. Marcus found himself very aware of how little he was wearing beneath the light sheet covering him, and how the flowing robes Esha wore did nothing to hide the elegant curves of her figure. "I should let you rest," Esha said, though she didn't immediately move toward the doorway. "The healing process can be exhausting, especially in the early stages." "Wait," Marcus said as she finally turned to leave. "Thank you for saving my life." She looked back at him, and her smile was warm enough to make his heart skip. "It is what we do, Marcus Webb, though I confess, not all patients prove quite so intriguing." After she left, Marcus lay back against the cushions, his mind racing despite his body's exhaustion. 3 days unconscious, untold time until rescue arrived, trapped in an ancient sanctuary with a beautiful alien healer whose touch seemed to set his nerves on fire. A crash might have been the end of one journey, but something told him it was the beginning of something else entirely. Outside, the twin suns set over the crimson dunes, and in the cooling evening air, the sanctuary's crystals began to glow brighter, filling the carved stone chambers with soft light. Somewhere deeper in the complex, Esha stood in her private chamber, pressing her palm against the cool sandstone wall, trying to calm the unexpected racing of her pulse. The human's presence was already affecting her in ways she hadn't anticipated, triggering responses her people's healing biology reserved for something far more significant than simple patient care. She had told him the truth about his remarkable healing, but she hadn't mentioned her own unusual reactions to his presence. This would require careful observation, she decided. For medical purposes, naturally. The fact that she found herself looking forward to their next interaction with an eagerness that had nothing to do with professional interest was merely a coincidence dot in the desert night. Ancient mechanisms of connection neither of them fully understood were already quietly at work. Morning on Zareth 7 arrived with golden light filtering through carved apertures in the sanctuary's ceiling. creating shifting patterns across the sandstone floors. Marcus woke to find himself significantly less pain-ridden than he'd expected, though his right leg remained immobilized in what appeared to be some kind of organic cast that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. "You wake with the suns," Visha's voice came from the doorway. "A good sign." She carried a tray laden with various items, her silver-white hair braided intricately down her back today, violet skin seeming to glow in the morning light. The flowing robes she wore were a pale lavender that complemented her natural coloring beautifully. "I feel better than I should," Marcus admitted, pushing himself up to sitting. The movement revealed more of his bare chest, and he noticed Thesha's amber eyes track the motion before she deliberately focused on arranging items on the nearby table. "The accelerated healing compounds are working as intended," she said, her tone professionally detached, though a subtle shift in her skin tone. A slight deepening of the violet suggested otherwise. "However, there are side effects I should explain." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "Not worried, no." Thesha settled onto her cushion, maintaining careful distance. "But aware. The compounds I've used contain biological catalysts that work by temporarily synchronizing your body's chemistry with mine. It allows me to essentially guide your healing process." "That sounds complicated." "It is an ancient practice," she explained, finally meeting his eyes. "But it creates certain ... connections. You may find yourself more attuned to my presence, my emotional state, and I to yours." As if to demonstrate her point, Marcus suddenly became aware of a subtle warmth in his chest that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Thesha's breathing. The sensation wasn't unpleasant, quite the opposite, but it was undeniably intimate. "I can feel you," he said softly, wonder in his voice. Thesha's violet skin darkened further, a blush that spread across her cheeks and down her neck. "Yes, the synchronization is stronger than I anticipated. Your biology is remarkably receptive." Before either could explore this revelation further, a younger voice called from beyond the chamber. "Thesha, are you monopolizing our guest again?" A figure appeared in the doorway, male and sharing Thesha's violet skin and amber eyes, though his features were sharper, more angular. He wore simple robes in shades of sand and rust, and his silver hair was cropped short. His grin was mischievous as he took in the scene before him. "Orin," Thesha said with exasperated fondness. "Must you announce yourself so dramatically? When my sister spends every waking moment in a patient's chamber?" "Absolutely." Orin strode in, completely unbothered by any potential impropriety. "I'm Orin, Thesha's infinitely more charming younger brother. You must be the skyfaller everyone's discussing." "Everyone?" Marcus asked. "The sanctuary houses 12 of us," Orin explained, settling cross-legged on the floor with casual grace. "Word spreads quickly in close quarters. The human who fell from the stars and captured my sister's undivided attention." "I haven't," Thesha began, her skin now a deep plum shade. "You've been here 3 times already today, and the sun's only just fully rose," Orin countered cheerfully. "Face it, sister, you're fascinated." Marcus found himself grinning despite the awkwardness. "I don't mind the company. It beats staring at beautiful walls alone, no matter how beautifully carved they are." Thesha stood abruptly. "I should check your bandages properly. Orin, if you're going to stay, make yourself useful. Bring fresh water from the spring chamber." Her brother's knowing smile suggested he understood exactly why she wanted him gone, but he complied with good humor. "As you command, O dedicated healer." Once alone again, Thesha moved to Marcus's side, unwrapping the bindings around his ribs with practiced efficiency. Her touch was clinical, professional, but Marcus couldn't ignore the way that strange warmth in his chest intensified with every contact. "Your brother seems nice," he offered, trying to diffuse the tension. "He's incorrigible," Thesha replied, but affection colored her tone. but kind. He helps maintain the sanctuary systems, ensures our isolation is preserved. Her fingers traced along his ribs, checking for any remaining breaks. The touch sent shivers across Marcus's skin that had nothing to do with temperature. Desha's hand stilled, and when she looked up at him, her amber eyes were wide. "You feel that too," she whispered. "It wasn't a question." "Every time you touch me," Marcus admitted. "It's like electricity, but warmer, deeper." Desha withdrew her hand slowly, sitting back on her heels. "This shouldn't be happening. The synchronization is meant to be subtle, a background connection that facilitates healing. What we're experiencing is more akin to ... To what?" She hesitated, clearly wrestling with something. "My people have bonding practices, Marcus. When we choose a life partner, we undergo a similar synchronization, but it's deliberate, ritualized, something built over months of careful preparation. This intensity, this quickly, it's unprecedented." Marcus's pulse quickened. "Are you saying we're bonding? Like permanently?" "No," Desha said quickly. "Not yet. The healing synchronization mimics the early stages, but it should fade once you're recovered. However," she paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. "However, if we're not careful, if we allow the connection to deepen, it could become something more permanent." "And that would be bad?" Desha's expression was complex, mixing concern with something that looked surprisingly like longing. "It would be complicated. My people's bonds are not casual things, Marcus. They're physiological as well as emotional. Breaking such a bond can be devastating for both parties. But forming one can be transcendent," she admitted softly. "But only if both parties truly choose it, understand what they're committing to." The air between them felt charged, heavy with implications and possibilities neither of them were quite ready to name. Marcus found himself hyper-aware of every detail about her, the way her chest rose and fell with each breath, the subtle scent that reminded him of desert flowers after rain, the way her silver-white hair caught the light. "Maybe," he said carefully, "we should focus on the healing part for now. Take things one day at a time." Relief in something that might have been disappointment flickered across Desha's features. "A wise approach," she agreed, returning to her examination with renewed focus on professionalism. But when Orin returned with the water, he took one look at them and grinned knowingly. "Oh yes," he muttered under his breath. "One day at a time. That's definitely working." Over the following days, Marcus's recovery progressed remarkably. The broken leg healed with what Desha admitted was unprecedented speed. The ribs knitted themselves back together, and the various cuts and contusions faded to nothing. But the connection between him and Desha only grew stronger. Despite their mutual attempts at maintaining proper boundaries, Marcus found himself able to sense her approach before she entered his chamber, felt her moods shifting like weather patterns in his awareness. When she was pleased, warmth bloomed in his chest. When she was troubled, a subtle ache settled in his bones. And he knew, though she tried to hide it, that she experienced the same with him. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. Desha shared stories of her people's history, their philosophy of healing as a sacred trust. Marcus told her about life among the stars, the loneliness of long cargo runs, the strange beauty of watching planets roll past from a ship's viewport. "Do you ever wish for a different life?" Desha asked one evening as she applied fresh compounds to his nearly healed leg. They were in the sanctuary's meditation chamber now, surrounded by bioluminescent crystals that created a starfield effect against the carved ceiling. "Sometimes," Marcus admitted, "it's a good living, but it's solitary. I've seen 1,000 worlds, but never really stayed long enough to know any of them. That sounds lonely." "It is." He watched her work, admiring the careful precision of her movements. "What about you? Ever want to leave this place? See what's beyond the sands?" Desha was quiet for a moment, her hand stilling on his leg. When I was younger, perhaps. I trained at the capital for several years, learned the modern medical arts alongside our traditional practices. But I always knew I would return here. The sanctuary calls to me in a way the wider world never did. Until now? Marcus ventured, feeling bold. Her amber eyes met his, and the connection between them flared bright enough that they both gasped softly. Until now, she admitted in a whisper. Marcus reached out, his hand finding hers. The contact sent waves of sensation through their shared connection, pleasure and fear and hope all tangled together. Desha, don't, she interrupted gently, though she didn't pull her hand away. Don't say something we're not ready for. You're still healing, still recovering. Once you're well, once you can think clearly without the influence of the compounds, then we can discuss what this is becoming. And if what I feel doesn't change. A smile, sad and hopeful at once, curved her lips. Then we will face that truth together. But not yet, Marcus Webb, not yet. That night, as Marcus lay in his chamber listening to the night winds whisper across the desert, he felt Visha's presence, like a second heartbeat in his chest. Somewhere in her own chambers, he knew she felt the same, bound together by accident and chemistry, and something neither of them had planned. The question wasn't whether they were falling for each other anymore. The question was what they would do about it when the healing was finally complete and the time for decisions arrived. Outside, the twin moons rose over the crimson sands, bathing the ancient sanctuary in silver light, bearing silent witness to a connection forming between two beings from different worlds, drawn together by chance and held by something far more profound. In 3 more days, the outpost would send a transport. In 3 more days, Marcus would have to choose between the stars he'd always known and the violet-skinned healer who had somehow become his entire universe. But that was 3 days away. Tonight, he simply let himself feel the warmth of their connection and dreamed of amber eyes glowing in crystal light.